sun burning. It was even a little bit of tears. Thank you, Q, for that sappy little story you told me.
You
But
love that though.
it
You
it
loved
was
it.
it was great, man. I had to go back home the next day, 24 hours later, looking at myself in the bathroom mirror, replaying that story. I fucking cried again, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what a great story. It was great. But again, that's just the epitome of the whole conference. Almost like a big holiday, a week long holiday, and we don't get that that much in our traditional settings. But to be around people, 1,000 people that have you know similar worldviews, or at least ethical standards of what money needs to be like. It's There's nothing like that in this world. I was happy to be a part of it.
Love that. And speaking of ethics, if you are watching this right now on Twitter, I've sent out a warning, but I unfortunately have been hacked and do not have access to my Q underscore like the letter Twitter account. Twitter, if you are watching this, if I'm showing you this later, please help me gain access to this. As you can see, I conduct business. I will pay for verification going forward. Like I will pay for that. Just let me have access to that account again. Beg of you, Twitter, Lord Elon, Master Elon, however you prefer to be. Uh, I don't know, called. Oh,
Something
ruler,
weird, probably.
oh, ruler of Earth and to be ruler of Mars, Elon Musk, please grant me access to my Twitter account again.
Chief Doge.
But I digress. Miami was an epic experience. It was lovely to get to hang with you, see see all of our internet friends in real life.
Always fun.
Great, so grateful for everyone, by the way, who came up to me and actually said that they watched this podcast and also Late Night Bitcoin. Honestly, made me tear up a little bit because I was like, "Yo, y'all are weird motherfuckers." If you are sitting there watching this one, because I don't really market this show, so really grateful for all of you who tune in and watch this. I hope you guys have as much fun watching and tuning in as we do, talking, shooting the shit, and recording this for you all. Um, but let's get into it.
Yeah.
And I guess I gotta eat my words a little bit, and I gotta just own it. The script that was leaked to me was clearly a lie. I was told that there was going to be one series coming down from 3 games to none, and one series coming down from 3 games to one for a just absolute classic Lakers Celtics NBA Finals, and we get neither of those teams. We get the Denver Nuggets playing their first ever NBA Finals. Congratulations to them, genuinely. And we also get the Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler being that dude after a season where we went into the playoffs genuinely questioning, like, I think the Heat are just going to go out in the first round because they're just going to beat themselves. And they showed up. They showed up to play playoff basketball. Um, Hats off to both of these teams. I, I want to start on the West Coast. Um, and we should probably start by putting a little bit more respect on the Denver Nuggets. This is the number one seed in the West. And, we gave a laundry list of reasons why this team is number one in the West, and it was never anything to do with them. It was more to do with, well, the Warriors had injuries, and like the Suns weren't the Suns until later in the year, and the Lakers never figured it out until the trade deadline. And you had all of these reasons as to why every other team is not the number one seed, instead of talking about why the Denver Nuggets are the one seed. And I think, especially in the Western Conference Finals, but throughout the playoff run, the Denver Nuggets have answered the question of, do they deserve to be the number one seed in the West? And frankly, Jokic answered the question of, I deserve to be a two-time MVP, and arguably should have been MVP this year. Obviously, we've had that conversation around like what the narrative of winning three in a row means. That aside, though, um, impressed with this Nuggets team. I don't want to dive too far into them because we'll talk about them in the finals. I want to talk the Lakers. Um, where do they go from here? This is a team that struggled all year. This was a 7 seed. They played in the play-in tournament, but they had the best record in the NBA after the trade deadline. Moving off Russell Westbrook, bringing in players like D'Angelo Russell and Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, Mo Bamba, these players Some of them played in the playoff run. Others were hurt and weren't able to play or weren't called upon to play significant minutes. I'll let you start. Like, what would you do if you are Rob Pelinka? What moves, if any, are you making this summer to get the ball rolling for the Lakers next year?
You know, that will be the most fun to talk about during the off season because the Lakers have so many moving parts right now. I believe that they have at least two restricted free agents, and the problem with these restricted free agents is that they performed really well when it mattered most. Hachimura and I think Austin Reeves are restricted free agents, and so when you think about other restricted free agents in the past, you think about Otto Porter for the Wizards. You think about what's his name on the Suns? That was the
Ayton.
center, Ayton, DeAndre Ayton. These guys had these really nice seasons, and then all of a sudden they go out into a limited market. They get they get offered some massive deal from another team, the Pacers, with Ayton recently, likes of Otto Porter a few years ago. I forgot who offered it. Problem or no problem, the teams end up matching it. Now, if the Lakers go through this situation, they're gonna have these players that get offered that deal immediately. That means that every other move that the Lakers make for the offseason, they have to make that before these offer sheets come in. For instance, are they going to reoffer D'Angelo or are they going to make a move on Kyrie? These are the moves that have to be in place before they throw big money, potentially big money at either one of those players. I think Lonnie Walker is also a free agent. Schroeder's also a free agent. So although we like to say keep everyone, um, I think that some people will be victims of their great performances and their overachievement in the playoffs because that's exactly what it was. And the Lakers have to position themselves to stay relevant in for a deep run next year. And that means that they need to prioritize that other shot creator, which means Kyrie, maybe a trade for Trae Young. We could talk about that later, but those other role players that made a difference, they're all not going to be here. The question is which one.
Not wrong. Like, two restricted free agents that you're referencing, Rui Hachimura, just played lights out, especially against Jokic, like became sort of that difference maker for us. And then, of course, the White Mamba himself. So these are two guys who are just pivotal for the Lakers. They're going to get overpaid. I'm going to take the other side.
Mhm.
Sorry, Hillbilly.
What
Hillbilly
happened?
Mamba, Austin Reeves. I was like, White Mamba doesn't make Hillbilly Mamba. All right. The Lakers in
Mhm.
2008,
White Mamba is
Scalabrini.
Scalabrini. That's right. I'm sorry. Continue.
Also a goat just for his press conference. If you've never seen that, you should just Google search Brian
I
Scalabrine
probably
NBA
should.
Finals press conference. But that NBA Finals in particular is what I want to reference. So in the 2008, the Lakers traded Kwame Brown for Pau Gasol, and this was a mid-season. I think it was like right before the trade deadline. It wasn't a deadline day deal, but it was right before it. And this was after two straight seasons where the Lakers were sort of like the 7 seed. They played the Suns 2 years in a row. They were looking like that's just the range they're going to be in again. And they get Pau Gasol and go on an absolute tear. I believe they had the second best record post trade deadline that season and finished as the number one seed in the Western Conference. They win the West and actually play the Boston Celtics in the finals. Now, say what you want about Lakers Celtics in that series. Lakers didn't have Andrew Bynum. Sure, the Celtics didn't have Perk 2 years later, but the Lakers were outmatched. They went down 3 games to 1. They did win game 5 to force game 6, but they couldn't seem to keep up with that Celtics team. Now, mind you, that Celtics team was the first season the big three of Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and Kevin Garnett came together. But they came together and had training camp. And this is something that you and I, like before the show, you even brought up. Like, I like giving players time to figure it out. I don't like overreacting. And I'm telling you right now, Rob Pelinka, because I know you're watching this, do not blow this team up. You actually have something here. And the continuity of playing together for a season and a half, like I'm even saying, go re-sign D'Lo and ignore Kyrie Irving right now. Like that's how far I'm willing to take this because I think you can, and I think the Buss family is going to be willing to go into the luxury tax for 1 year for LeBron's final season, and you might even be able to bring in a player like a Draymond Green for a veteran minimum, fill out these last couple spots here or there, and let these guys cook. And the best example that I can give you that works right now based on this theory is the exact team that beat you, the Denver Nuggets, where they have had Aaron Gordon and Jamal Murray and Jokic for about 3 seasons now playing together and have slowly been piecing these players together. And let me remind you who the X factor in the Western Conference Finals was. And sure, Jokic won the conference finals MVP, which I can't believe is an actual award. And I can't believe that sentence left my mouth. But the fact that you had KCP not even as one of your first three like defensive choices, but as like your sixth man on defense was the difference maker because you never allowed D'Angelo Russell to get going while when he was playing with the second unit because KCP was just there. So let me put it more directly to you, Mr. Pelinka. Your big blow up trade for Russell Westbrook that saw us lose KCP and oh my God, what's his name? Pretty boy?
Kuzma.
Kuzma. And not resigning Caruso because you thought that THT was going to be the guy. Dude, don't blow this team up. Give Darvin Ham and the squad one more run. Let LeBron go out with a fairy tale ending in the finals. And don't overthink this. Don't overthink this. But that's just we'll get into all of this and more during the off season sort of talks. But that's just my sort of 2 cents. Like I was explaining to you, man, the series could very well have been 2-2 or even 3-1 after 4 games for the Lakers. Like those they weren't blowouts per se. I think the Lakers, especially game 2, leading for 41 minutes and then just collapsing in the fourth quarter. Not to mention the insane comeback the Lakers had in game 1 and then the blown called shift of momentum in game 4. Like those are 3 games that very easily could have gone the other way. So while it looks like the Lakers were out-handled and the Nuggets just outclassed them, I think it's much closer than a 4-0 record suggests. But that's just my bias coming out a little bit.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor this the Lakers right now because they're going to be our primary talk during the summer. But I would say that a lot of those times when LeBron would have needed help per se, you kind of just wish that a guy like Trae Young or Kyrie were there as opposed to D'Angelo. I mean, I have the stats. Forget on my phone. I remember them. I believe he averaged four points less in the playoffs than he did in the regular season. He shot 10% less in 3-point range, 41% in the regular season, 31% in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And his regular field goal percentage, his assists were down by 1.5, and his rebounds were down, I think, 1.5 as well. I had it in my phone. Don't want to hunt that down. Long story short, when you're a star player, when you're a top 3 player on a team, when you're arguably a max player, your stats are supposed to accentuate in the playoffs. Even Kevin Durant in a losing effort, averaging 27 a game during the regular season, he averaged 30, and that was with Booker averaging 35. So he's probably the best second option ever. I don't know any number 2 option in a playoff run that was averaging 30 a game. So D'Angelo, if you weren't averaging 18, if you were averaging 18 points, if you're just averaging slightly better than your average, regular season average, what difference could that have made? Well, the Lakers lost by 5, by 6, by 11, and by 2. against the Denver Nuggets. That probably could have helped you got them out in any number of places. Him shooting 10% less at 3-point range, where could that have helped in all these close games? So would that have saved the series? Maybe not. Maybe they would have lost in six. But you can't say that this type of performance is allowable. And I do believe that there are too many options at the guard position for him to stick around LA for much longer.
Fair, fair. We'll get into that and a lot more in the coming months. I wanna now shift
Yep.
over to the East Coast to a series that like I was looking forward to catching a game, and then when it started to turn into what it started turning into, I think a lot of us were like, I don't think we need to see this series. And honestly, I'm kind of glad the game we would have gone to would have been such a blowout. Um, and I got to admit, man, watching the Celtics claw their way back and force
Mm.
game seven pissed me the F off. Just like seeing them get to do it and watching us get swept was just like getting all those like Celtics, like, oh, dude, we're about to do it.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I'm going to say it like this because I want my little victory lap. Our guest today and you, I sent the same message to both of you. Unfortunately, given everything going on with my Twitter account, I don't think he saw my DMs from the other Twitter account that I've been
Mhm.
tweeting or messaging him from. But so I said what I said with an intention of jinxing things. And I point blank was like, Celtics are going to win. Celtics are going to win because I wanted them to fucking lose. So I will own and say, yes, I did last night tell you I thought Celtics would win game seven, complete one of the greatest comebacks in NBA playoff history. But I did it out of spite, and I did it with the hope that my spite would work, and it worked. So Jaylen Brown's like gone, right? Like he's like already packed his. He's already like looking for new places.
Let let's go. That's another one that we should save for the summer. I will say that the Celtics did. I think it's fun as much as people make fun of Charles Barkley. He called them out on so many key things, and one of the biggest ones was why are the Celtics shooting all these 3-pointers like a bunch of stupid heads or something? However, Charles Barkley from Alabama is talking. Alabama or Arkansas? I forget.
Arkansas.
Arkansas. But the catch is that when you look at it, Game Seven, and you look at the type of player that Jaylen Brown is, and he can make mid-range shots. He can drive. He can pull up. Same thing with Tatum. You saw so many missed threes, and I'm not saying that they can't make them, but when these teams follow the Warriors archetype so closely that they forget that they are not Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. The Splash Brothers are historic performers at that 3-point line, and they don't die by the three as much as the rest of us regular people. And I mean everyone but Steph and Klay. And so what you saw is when you have home court advantage, when you have the crowd behind you, when you have momentum behind you, you could still screw a game up by shooting too many threes. And that's exactly what the Celtics did. I believe they missed their first 10 3-pointers. And I mean, even though they had a lid on the rim, even driving to the basket, still, you're taking these difficult shots that aren't guaranteed, and you end up just kind of pissing away an opportunity to close out the series on your floor in historic fashion. So when we talk about live by the three, die by the three, that's exactly what happened. And even though we had some valiant efforts by Derek White, Tatum staying on the floor despite a twisted ankle, when you look at the way a team bringing up the Lakers again, Lakers saw the 3-point shooting by the Warriors and said, that's okay. We're going to the rim. We're going to get it to AD. We're going to get it to Rui at 15 feet. We're going to get it to LeBron driving. And they made themselves stay in the game with efficient shooting, with getting to their spots. The Celtics settled, and it cost them. It cost them everything this year. And I think that the league is moving away from that as you see these long defenders becoming a staple. The people who play like Steph and Damon, they're going to be facing what's his name, Vanderbilt. They're going to be facing the French phenom, 7'3" on the wing. They're going to be facing the Oklahoma City. Who's the guy who's on Oklahoma City? 7 foot small forward. These guys are long and they're fast, and you're not just going to be able to create space and shoot a 26-footer. They're going to be on you, and so you're going to have to get by them, get into the gaps, and be able to make a mid-range shot. I think the age of the 3-point three or nothing is over, and it's showing with the Warriors losing in the second round, and with the Celtics losing in horrible fashion by shooting a bunch of threes. It's just not functional for the type of people that you're going up against. Even a middle-sized team like the Heat, because they just close out and people forget that there's other places to shoot than the 3-point line.
Fair. My dumbass mixed up Hillbilly and Charles, and Charles, the big round mound, was actually from Alabama. So you were correct there.
Right on. Right on.
You're not wrong. I think, there was an element of the Celtics trying to be who they're not. I think Missoula, the coach, is probably on his way out, or is just going to be having a new staff that may have a little bit more experience and say to help him gain sort of composure is the wrong word, but like just know-how. And I think his youthfulness was exposed, especially in the second game 7 they had to play in this playoffs. Now, I have a hard time believing that a team that has been to the Eastern Conference Finals 5 times is not good. But I had this debate in my mind, and it goes on in 2 ways. And I was hoping to have someone else here because I think I know your answer to this. But like, there is a little bit of weakness in the Eastern Conference. It's long been held as the weaker conference. Like, you have it sort of being top heavy. Arguably now there are 5 legitimate finals teams if you want to include the Cavs and the Heat. The Heat having made the finals in the bubble and the Eastern Conference Finals last year as well. And then of course the Bucks, the Celtics, and the 76ers. So that's a 5 deep team. Like, that,
Any one of them could have made it.
absolutely. On the other side of the coast though, you had the West, where like there was a case for all but maybe 2 of the teams that made the playoffs, and the 2 I'm thinking are the
Kings. Let me
Timberwolves.
guess. Oh, Kings and Timberwolves.
Yeah, those are the
Okay.
2. Those
Yeah.
are the 2 in my head that I was like, eh.
Yeah.
So like, while some people will say like, oh, the West is just so much deeper, like, I don't buy that anymore.
Mm-mm.
But if you want to buy that argument, does that weaken the case of, hey, like, we shouldn't blow the Celtics up? Like, they're knocking on the door. Their core is really young. Like, they're about to figure it out. They're about to get over that hump. Is that a legitimate case to make? Or is it, hey, like, they've done it because it's the East, and if they were in the West, they probably would have made the Western Conference Finals once, maybe twice.
No, I don't. I actually don't agree with that. I think that the Celtics are a very good team. I mean, in my opinion, I think they could have beaten the Warriors in one of those years where the Warriors were vibing. They're very similar to the Warriors, except
Pause.
they're younger. Yeah, I think they could have.
Pause. You're talking like when Tatum was a rookie?
Let
When
me
Jaylen Brown was a rookie?
hold on. Let me go back. So we have 22. Who was the West in 22? The Warriors.
Warriors. And it was the
I think,
Celtics.
and I think that the Celtics, if they were in the West, they could have beaten the Warriors. Okay,
The
so
Celtics lost to the Warriors in the finals that year.
I'm saying, yeah, they lost to them. That doesn't mean that they couldn't have beat them. Just because they beat them there, it doesn't mean they couldn't have competed. 21, who was in the West? Who came out of the West? Phoenix. So, and they played the Bucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like the Celtics could have been good enough to play against the Suns then. I'm not saying, and again, this is not saying, oh yeah, they just would have steamrolled. This is they would have competed and maybe lost in 6, maybe lost in 7. But they aren't. This not to say that all these teams in the West. I'm trying to argue all these teams in the West and then the Celtics. That's not the case. I'm saying that the Celtics are a very, very good NBA basketball team. So let me digress. The Celtics are a young team with a bunch of they're still rising stars. I don't think Tatum's 26 yet, and Jalen Brown's a similar age, but very similar to the Lakers. They don't. They may not hold. They may not hold the keys to that. There may be people have their own incentives, and if I were Jalen Brown, I would be going to another team where I can build up and create my own brand with potentially my own shoe and my own credit. Because any wins that he gets, we've all seen Scottie Pippen. None of these players want to be Scottie. That's just how it boils down. They'll be Scottie when they're 30, but every one of them want to get their chance at. I wonder how I can be when I'm at least 1B. I wonder how I can be when I'm the Anthony Davis to LeBron, or or if I'm Damon Lillard. So it's like, in my opinion, I think that Jalen Brown will probably see his way to greener pastures. Whether they end up being greener or not is beside the point. I think he's going to go find his path, a la Kobe Bryant. So in the same way, the Lakers, the restricted free agents, they may say, hey, Lakers want to sign me for 6, 7, 8 million a year, and this team is giving me 16. I'm sorry, money talks. So I think that money talks for certain players, and accolades and respect talk for others. So I think that the Celtics may have, if they don't retool, they could be losing their very, very, very good number 2 option, and they're going to have to figure out how to appease him, whether it's a sign and trade, whether it's trading him before he becomes a free agent. But I've been thinking about this. I think you may have even brought it up a long time ago when we first started our podcast. That will be an interesting play, even though he's locked up for next year. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the conversations for, you know, can we trade him? Can we get value for him before he decides that he just wants to walk away?
I think if we don't hear an announcement around an extension being signed by Jalen Brown before Christmas, I'll give them up until Christmas to figure this
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
They spend the next 2 months shopping Jalen Brown for that exact mentality. It's like this is a player you can get a haul for.
yes,
Like you can get picks, you can get a name that I saw getting thrown around, which like personally I
Lillard.
think it's a downgrade. Damian Lillard was a
Hmm.
name where I was like, I get why that would be for the win now mode of the Celtics that can make sense.
Yeah,
But I think for the franchises to step down, um, it'll be really interesting.
yeah,
It'll be really interesting, I think, to see. And again, I don't want to bog us down too much on like sort of postseason
yeah.
speculation. I think everyone's looking at Jalen. I will say this to your point around D'Angelo kind of hiding and being a shell of himself. Jalen Brown wasn't all that impressive in this series, and especially not in Game 7.
Mm,
Like I felt like he had moments, but I don't want moments from the guy that I'm going to trade my entire franchise for because I think this is now the face of my franchise. I want a guy who takes over. And as much as I like to knock Tatum, like Tatum took over. And I think Jalen Brown disappeared in moments like honestly in a similar way where AD kind of disappeared, and I'm now questioning like you might not be the dude anymore. You might be the one B. You might be a better number 2 option than the average number 2,
right.
but you're worse than the number 1 option of every other team. So therefore you're invalid in being a number 1 option.
At 26 years old, he's still going to want to try to discover that for himself.
Totally.
And that may mean going to the Charlotte Bobcats and being the number 1 option, or the Portland Trailblazers, some borderline. I mean, yeah, some borderline team that's like, they're a 10 seed, but hey, we got Jalen Brown now. And that still may make them crap. But he has to discover that for himself. Then all of a sudden he's 31 years old, and it's like, no, no, I want to win. Oh, I'm going to the Lakers, blah blah blah. And so, eh, I again, free market economics. I think if you are that good, you want to see, hey, am I that guy, and discover it for yourself. And there are very few people that can be it. And oftentimes you find out, even guys like Kevin Durant, you just have to collaborate, and you have to go find those opportunities to collaborate. You don't get to just bring people to you like LeBron or Magic or Kobe. Those players are different, and so he'll discover that. And if he's successful, then more power to him. But I think that this will be the straw that breaks that Celtic back, if you will.
Totally. Like there have been plenty of players who have, like, an example that comes to my mind, honestly, is James Harden. Like came off the
Yes.
bench, was like he was thought of as the scorer, disappeared in that finals against the Heat when he was on the Thunder. Like KD and Russ really showed up. Harden just never found his rhythm, and then all of a sudden goes to the Rockets, and then is like 10x his skill set as a result of just being able to have a system built around him. So to your point, like he should for his career's sake go and explore that. But if I'm an NBA GM, I'm not trading a king's ransom for him.
Right. Right.
But he like
But if you have a king's ransom to give up, there are a lot of teams that have. What do we do with these 7 first-round draft picks in the next 3 years? Nets, OKC.
okay, see, yeah.
Now you have all this stuff. You almost have too much money that you have it to throw away. Now you can't do that if you're the Lakers, but if you're one of those two teams, OKC, New Jersey. I know there's another team that just had maybe it's Washington, the Wizards, that got a bunch of trade draft picks from the Lakers. It's like those are the teams that can, hey, we have the goods to trade to you if you want them. And they would probably say, we'll throw an extra one, just because at the end of the day, those draft picks, the closer you get to the draft, the less valuable they are, because you realize that guy that I'm going to pick for my 22nd pick in the draft is really just not is not worth that much.
See, I agree with you that that's the mentality, and the market value of these players was drastically changed forever because of Sam Presti and OKC, specifically with the beginnings of the Paul George trade, and then the first Russell Westbrook trade, and then the Chris Paul trade. Like they stacked the deck in a way where it's like, if you're not offering 4 first-round picks for an all NBA caliber player, the conversation like doesn't even get to be started. Like just go away. So the marketplace is demanding that level, and teams will pay it. Like to your point, like some people always overpay for a player, where it's like, just because we have the cap room, so we might as well just go for it because this is all we can do. It'll be really interesting. Have you seen these random like scenarios for like, oh, this is what the Spurs could get for trading the number 1 overall pick?
No.
Dude, I've seen like, so one of the trades where I was like, not actually out of the realm of possibility if the Spurs were in win now mode, which they're not, was like 76ers trading Embiid and a few picks for the number 1 overall pick. Another one was that was the only viable one in my opinion. The other 2 that I saw, it was an ESPN article. It was OKC sending like 6 picks and Chet Holmgren, and I was like, eh. And then the other one was Orlando sending, I think, 5 picks, and then Paolo Banchero, and I was also like, eh. Like the fact that ESPN has to create an article around like, oh, this is what the Spurs may trade Victor. I gotta learn how to pronounce his.
Yeah, just say VW.
Wembo. I'm gonna call him Wembo for now. Wembo is going to the Spurs, and we just need to address this because we haven't talked since Greg Popovich, possibly a witch, possibly some sort of like, I don't know.
Did I miss this? What happened?
The Spurs won the lottery, right?
Oh yeah.
And so, like, what I need to know and understand is how does Greg Popovich continue to get the number one overall pick when there is this
Oh
generational
yeah.
talent? Like the last
Tim
time you really had
Duncan.
like it, like sure they weren't going to get it with LeBron because they were literally like on the cusp of winning the finals and they ended up winning the finals that year. Or no, they had won the finals and then LeBron got drafted. So like you're obviously not getting that. Then like you get Kawhi Leonard. You convince the Indiana Pacers to trade you Kawhi Leonard, and then you piss Kawhi off so he goes off on his merry way. Then Dejounte Murray, I'm butchering his name. You turn him into a star.
Deontay
Deontay
Murray.
Deontay
Deontay
Murray.
Murray. Murray, yeah.
Then he like, nope, out of here. But the fact that you got Tim Duncan, and David Robinson,
But he wasn't coaching. He didn't draft David Robinson.
fair. But
And
he
two,
came into generational talent.
yeah, but like when you think about it, they were if they weren't going to get the top pick, who would? The Pistons or the Rockets? That's a three-sided die. Like he had to,
I mean, you're definitely not giving the Gores family any sort of generational talent. So Pistons are out, and then does technically doesn't MJ still own the Hornets?
the Hornets weren't anywhere near that. The
I thought they had the number
Bobcats, no, they were the fourth worst team.
right, but
They
they had
weren't
the
going to
number
get.
2 overall pick.
Oh, are they? Well, I mean, they were fortunate to get that close because they were the fourth best,
Fair,
fourth likely. So I understand like the witch, the warlock, but I mean, like you could probably find some patterns elsewhere. I think
fair.
look, he's going to get it, and Popovich ain't going to coach him for that long anyways. 2 years. Popovich is 75. Like he needs to. I don't know what he needs to pick his heir apparent soon.
Yeah, I mean, oh yeah, we'll dive more into
Yeah,
the
that's
draft conversations, but I want to now flip to the finals. But I want to flip to the finals with a fun little segue.
go ahead.
Um, you obviously know what round Jokic was drafted in, correct?
Second,
Right,
late
42
or
overall pick.
okay, mid. Yeah.
So I know you kind of were discounting these late picks, but Jamal Murray was also a late pick. In fact, do you know how the Nuggets ended up with Jamal Murray?
He's a UCLA product, right? I forget, but
Duke. I mean, not Duke. UK. I thought, but
Kentucky,
uh,
yeah, Kentucky, yeah, that sounds
yeah,
right. No, I
yeah.
don't. I don't remember.
Um. So Jamal Murray was the 7th overall pick. He was his
That's not that
trade.
late.
His so true, fair. He's a lottery pick.
Yeah, I mean Steph Curry was a ninth pick or a
Yeah,
seventh pick or something. Yeah.
and I think Giannis was 14. He was the last pick in the lottery.
Yeah. So I mean, that happens. But what about it?
The Nuggets only had that pick because of the Carmelo Anthony trade.
Hello
So Jamal Murray is part of the Carmelo Anthony trade. So
to
these
New York.
trades where you trade draft picks 5, 6, 7 years down the line, I mean, Carmelo Anthony was traded in the 2010-2011 NBA season.
Is an afterthought.
Like this is a draft pick. Jamal was drafted, by the way, in 2016.
Oh,
So it was
see
a
that.
draft pick that was 5 years later, and he's like when he was really growing into his stride, he really showed up during the bubble, and then he got injured, and then you didn't really hear from him for 2 more years. That means that draft pick you didn't really reap that reward for almost 10 years.
Well, I
10
mean,
years.
he was averaging 18 points a game in 2019, in 2018, 2019. So his last four seasons were, mind
Okay,
you,
8 years. It took you
yeah,
8 years to
yeah.
reap that reward.
No, I understand, right?
Like, I think we should not be discounting trades that happen that are for draft picks that are 6, 7 seasons down the line because like you just never know what happens to a team. I mean, the Lakers are the perfect case study of a team that blows up their team with trades, and then all of a sudden, like their draft picks become way more valuable than they ever thought they would be because the trade didn't pan out the way they had anticipated.
That's right.
So that's sort of my segue into this finals preview.
Mhm.
The number 1 seed from the West, Denver Nuggets, and the number 8 seed from the East, Miami Heat, face off. Nuggets have home court advantage. Nuggets have, in my opinion, the best player in this series. Nuggets also have the best point guard in this series. And then where things get sticky for me is actually the bench. The Nuggets bench is deeper and better, but I think there's a level of talent that comes out from the Heat that Spoelstra just. Kyle Lowry is not the Kyle Lowry that he was during his prime seasons playing for the Toronto Raptors. But Spoelstra is able to get 20 incredible minutes out of a guy who arguably shouldn't be playing basketball anymore. Arguably. Um, Duncan Robinson cannot be found, but you run the risk of if he gets hot, he is hot. Like Duncan Robinson can just shoot. Um, I think Hero is like out all year, so I don't think you're gonna get a surprise Tyler Hero appearance.
I thought he was practicing, so
Oh, he is.
he's practicing. He was practicing as of game 4. So I don't know what that means. You know, that's hard to come back from a broken hand, and I think it's a shooting hand too. So, but I would say don't be surprised if he doesn't show up in the middle of the series. But
Fair.
continue. I'm sorry.
Fair. No. Thank you for that. The thing that I just quickly said was like the earliest he would be back is game 3. That's what they said about Mo Bamba. Then they pushed it to game 4, and then they were just like, eh. So look, the Nuggets have been good. The Nuggets are undefeated at home this playoff. So to be honest with you, if the Nuggets jump out to a 2-0 series lead, I'm not surprised. I don't think anyone should be here. I'll let you. I've been talking a lot about this. Like, what are you paying attention to? What are the keys to this series for you?
Um, you know, thing about the Heat is that their strength is in their guards. You know, Caleb Martin, Gabe Vincent have and Kyle Lowry have shored up the injuries to Victor Oladipo, the Tyler Hero. Um, when Jimmy Butler is not Jimmy over the last 2 to 3 games, those guys have come through. And it's like if those guys weren't playing above their pay grade, that series we would be celebrating, oh my gosh, historic Celtics, and you would be in a bad mood today because we're celebrating the Celtics and while the Lakers have to sit home and watch. But I digress. Those guys are all 6'6" and under. What they face is 6'8" Aaron Gordon, muscle bound athlete phenom. They face 6'10", 6'11" Michael Porter Jr., who could shoot from the 3. They face a big point guard, 6'4", Jamal Murray. They face long KCP. They face 2.5 times MVP Nikola Jokic. So what you have is just massive team. They have Jeff Green coming off the bench, massive team. They have this long Bruce Brown, massive team. And I just feel like in the same way the Lakers were kind of too big for the Warriors, I could potentially see the Denver Nuggets essentially being too big for the Miami Heat. Now, the Miami Heat of the regular season, horrible 3-point shooting team. If they can be this hands down, man down team that they have been since the beginning of the playoffs, if they can beat the Bucks, they can beat the Nuggets. That's just it. And when they beat the Bucks, I said like it's like that meme from that Tom Hanks movie. You know, I'm the captain now, and that's why it's like who's going to win between Miami and so and so. Miami. I thought they were the favorites in every series, and it keeps on getting progressively harder, but they are essentially the big dogs in the playoffs because they knocked off the big dogs. That's not to say that they're not facing another big dog. I still see Denver as a favorite, but Miami, if they can play the way that they did against the first half of the Celtics series, the way they beat the Bucks, yeah, I see this series going deeper than what I think it will. But again, we're talking about what Miami has to do, and that's just continue doing what they're doing. Knock down those threes, have Jimmy be playoff Jimmy. Um, that's a lot of stuff that I didn't see much in the last 3 games. So are they winding down? It remains to be seen.
Yeah, like beating the Bucks sort of allows for the Heat to at least have a case to beat this team. One thing that I think the Heat have the advantage of is now he's a shell of what he used to be, and what he used to be was never a defensive prowess. But you actually have both Kevin Love and Bam Adebayo, so you have extra size to, I think, deal with Jokic. One thing that like kind of matters more though, I think at least watching the Western Conference Finals, like the size isn't what Jokic that's not going to cause Jokic problems. Anthony Davis has size and length and he didn't cause problems. It's the physicality. And Rui was really physical with Jokic, and that's what caused him to, I think, get out of his sort of rhythm. I don't see Kevin Love being that physical guy if he's got to switch onto Jokic. Bam, I expect that from him. Bam, he's got one job. The Heat, if the Heat win the finals, it's because Bam Adebayo is going to be the finals MVP, and he held Jokic to a stat line of, wait for it, 25, 8, and 8. Like, by most standards, an impressive stat line. But for Nikola Jokic, who has been averaging a triple-double for this playoffs, who has been an absolute mismatch for every single player, Bam's only shot is going to be more physical than he's ever been. And the issue I have with that is Bam is a little undisciplined. And it might just be because he just doesn't get the calls that some of the superstar players tend to get. And he just doesn't get that help from the refs from time to time. But Bam finds himself in foul trouble a lot. And unfortunately, I think Jokic will use that to his advantage. Like, who's going to get a call between Jokic or Bam? It's probably going to be the two-time MVP, Nikola Jokic. So there is a layer of this where, and yeah, I'm already blaming the refs before the series has started, like classic Lakers fan. To me, it comes down to, can you slow Jokic down? Let it, like, fine, let Jamal Murray cook. Let KCP cause you a headache or problem. It's just going to come down to ultimately whether or not you can get Jokic so uncomfortable, or at least uncomfortable enough to not be playing his game. And sure, if Kevin Love can show up and grab rebounds, absolutely. If anyone watched me watching any of the Lakers Nuggets games, you saw me screaming to box out, box out, box out, all the way back from the Warriors series, where for some reason we're giving up offensive rebounds to Gary Payton Jr. and Klay Thompson. And then, of course, game one, Jokic has double-digit rebounds in the first quarter. No wonder we were down by 20 points in that game. Like, you cannot allow this man to establish his presence. And the only way to not allow him to establish the presence is to just body and bully and be physical with him. All that said, Michael Jordan's long lost son could also very well just absolutely go bananas and bonkers. I don't think it'll be enough. I think Jimmy Butler's really going to need some help from his bigs. And I've said this in almost every series when I've not picked the Heat. I'm gonna hold to it though. And I'm gonna go with Nuggets in 5.
Yeah, I do see Nuggets in 5 as well. The problem with this Nuggets team is that there's when you're big and you can shoot and you're playing against a smaller team that they're only big. The problem, the Bam situation, second leading scorer on the team over the course of the playoffs. Him having that role to beat down on Jokic, it's going to beat down on him. It's going to take away his point production. Now, it's not to say that Vincent and Martin don't shore that up, because over the last quarter of the playoffs, they've been the primary shot creators, shot makers. It's going to be an interesting role for Bam. I don't know if he has the capability to fully grasp it. Again, he's had games where he's scored 7 points and it's been basically anemic on offense. But considering the potency of this Denver team, we're going to need some superhero performances out of Bam, and I don't know if he has that in him per se, especially against one of the best two centers in the league. So NBA quick takes saying I'm trying to find a way that the Heat would have a chance, so I'm not taking off guard again. I think he's trying to say that he's trying to figure out the way Heat have a chance, and I'm trying to find a way Heat have a chance as well, because they have figured out a way to power through all these situations in an underdog format. They've been the 8th seed everywhere, so they're always the underdog. Yet still, they have powered through with their shot making. That's been the difference. They weren't shooters, and all of a sudden they became shooters. They were the 28th best three-point shooting team, and now all of a sudden they're making every single three-pointer. I believe they were probably, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I wouldn't be surprised if they were top 2 in three-point percentage in the playoffs thus far. So three-point shooting will win you games. I don't think that they'll be able to shoot as good against a team that's as long and athletic as the Denver Nuggets. When they're closing out, when 6'10 Michael Porter's closing out on you, and when your offensive rebounding is next to nothing because Jokic averages, what do I see? 13 rebounds a game, and Michael Porter averages 8 rebounds a game. They're not giving you second opportunities. You're not going to get many. So if you don't make that initial shot, you're in trouble. So long story short, this is just going to be, I won't say that the Heat will play bad. It will look like they're playing bad because they won't have many opportunities. I'd still say Denver in 5.
I'm trying to do the thing from the Avengers where Doctor Strange like sees all the scenarios, and genuinely the only scenario in my head is this: the Nuggets are going to win the first 2 games at home. They're undefeated at home. They're going to keep that streak going at least for those 2 games. But you get Tyler Hero back in game 3, and for some reason, despite having a broken hand in his shooting wrist, he somehow shows up and becomes that number 2 scorer that Jimmy Butler desperately needs. You also get a little bit of vintage K-Love, and you get a little bit of vintage Kyle Lowry to pick up some of the slack, because Bam is turning into like defensive stopper, not even caring about offense. Like, I'm just going to set a pick, maybe grab an offensive board, put back on offense kind of player. Like, don't even try to use me. Like, let me conserve all of my energy to play 48 minutes of defense against Nikola Jokic. And on top of that, you have some of these Nuggets players playing for their first ever NBA, playing the first ever finals. For most of them, I think the only player who's played in the finals is KCP. So you maybe get a little spooked and you drop game 3, and then all of a sudden the Heat feel like, hey, at least at home we can defend this. And if the Heat can get it back to 2-2, and then you have Tyler Hero getting into that rhythm, I think they could steal game 5. And then you go home for game 6 and have a shot at winning it out. But if you don't win in 6, you're not winning in 7. So I think there becomes this larger.
Tell that to the Celtics. Look out.
Fair, but the Celtics weren't undefeated at home this playoffs.
That's right.
So I think it's one of those situations where the Heat could draw blood in Denver. I don't think they will. I think the Nuggets close it out in game 5 at home and actually become undefeated on their home court this playoffs. I think that is the story that I think happens. But in the scenario where the Heat somehow managed to win, it's going to be because they carry the momentum of winning the 2 games at home, and you find that rhythm and win game 5, which is also exactly how the Heat won in 2006. They dropped 2 games in a row to the Dallas Mavericks and then won 4 in a row to win that
Mm.
series. Dwayne Wade showed up. So you could get it. That's sort of how I see this happening for the Heat. Um, Watch me eat my words and the Heat steal game 1.
If the Heat do the unthinkable and beat another number 1 seed, are we surprised? No, but we're looking at, NBA Quick Takes says Spoelstra adjusted every series. He's a great all-time great coach, and he's learning under Pat Riley, who is also all-time great coach and all-time great executive. They have the capability to win. We're not saying that this is oh, they're just outmatched. We're saying that Denver has their experience too. Denver has gone through season after season missing Porter, missing Murray, and all of a sudden they have their team all together, vibing, grooving, no one hurt. And what are they doing? They're bowling through the playoffs. The Lakers weren't scrubs. The teams that they faced weren't scrubs. And they're going to end up facing the Heat, a tired Heat team versus a well-rested Denver team. Would you say that they'll be rusty? I would say that instead the Heat will be the team that's like, we just got done playing, now we have to play these guys again, and we have to have Jokic leaning on us. This is the type of thing where they're going to probably take their first breath in game 1 after that emotional game 7, and that may be that they may not ever catch up from that first game loss. And that's a maybe. They're both teams are in the NBA Finals for a reason, but I'm putting my money on Denver unless
Yeah.
that spread is really nice.
No. It's Denver. It's Denver unless I'm proven otherwise. But we are getting to that point in this episode where we're gonna wrap things up. As always, appreciate everyone who tuned in and joined us. Be sure to like and subscribe down below. We'll be back next week to recap some of the early games or early first couple games of the finals. Finals tips off on Thursday, right?
Yeah, in 2 days. Yeah.
Alrighty. On that note, it's been another episode of the Bitcoin Ballers. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back next week.